Yes, I'm president of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel saying, Joy, my Butch Rosenbalm. Oh, man,
I'm well. How are you, Joel?
I'm doing great, ready for the playoffs tomorrow. But we're here to discuss Texas Chainsaw Massacre. When did you first see the original?
Um, I can tell you almost exactly. It was 1985 in Memphis, Tennessee. I have a cousin that lives down there. It was late in the year because I remember it was chilly. Well, it was early. Anyway, it was chilly. I remember that. And he's like, "Hey, man, we gotta go to this drive-in. We're having a triple feature, and the third film was TCM." And I don't remember what the first two were, but man, they were dogs. That's the way they used to do things at drive-ins back then. And I kept turning around watching this movie behind that was on the other screen, and I kept catching this one scene with all these white bricks, and this chick walks towards them, and then these hands come out, and that just stuck with me for years. I found out later it was George Romil's Day of the Dead, but that's how I know what year I saw it. So
Nice. The year I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre was right before the third one came out. And so I had not seen the first one yet at that time when I was a kid. So I decided to watch it. My mom's sitting there and she's like, I want you to know they're going to tell you this movie's based on a true story. It's more based on Ed Gein.
yeah,
And I'm like, who? And she's like, just watch the movie and I'll explain later. And then she explained to me who Ed Gein was. And she goes, look, Psycho did the same thing. Okay.
right. What was that? Deranged was another one from the early '70s, I believe, is what it was.
So a lot of horror movies seem to take from Ed Gein. Why do you think that is?
He was really um, probably the first known uh, serial killer in America. There was what is H.H. Holmes. I don't think he was as well known. I mean, pardon me if I say Guine. That's how I've always said it. I've heard the name Yin and Guine. So,
Right.
um, and just the sheer craziness. I don't know what else to call it. I mean, I know it's not a clinical term, but him killing the people and trying to make the woman suit. Silence of the Lambs. There's another one.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's just so crazy and at that time so odd. I mean, really, the only other, if you will, big name you could probably think of would be Jack the Ripper. So I mean, probably in the '60s, '50s and '60s, he was basically America's Jack the Ripper.
What was really creepy is when my mom showed me like this documentary on Ed Gein on TV, and they show his mother's room and how nice it looked, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this guy's insane. Like, what's wrong with him? Like,
Lots of things is what's wrong with him.
right? But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it had no real big names in it. This is sort of a lost art of modern films. You could literally not pick any of these actors out of a lineup of famous actors, which I sort of wish horror would get back to. And I know they've announced a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's coming to Netflix here in February, in less than a month.
Yeah.
But what do you think the biggest difference is between the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and maybe its sequels, even?
The our friend,
Yes.
the original. I actually, when we start to do these, I like to try and rewatch them. And, if it's been a while, and it's been a while since I watched Texas TCM. Man, there's just something about that film. It's unnerving. It's my understanding when Hope Hooper submitted it to the MPAA, they came back and said no, but couldn't give him any cuts to make. Like the usual. Oh, you're showing that dead body too long or whatever. And there's just a odd film. I've said it kind of reminds me of a snuff film, a
Yep.
real snuff film. Um, it just, starts off with, these 5 kids, and it is kind of 20 minutes with jerks, but you get to know them, what they're going on. It's not just, hey, we're all doing crazy stuff, and we end up doing something we shouldn't. I mean, they just they chose the wrong road to go down, and like TCM2. Shout out to Bill Mosley, who as a chop top is amazing. It goes off the more the funny end, if you will. TCM3, shout out to Ken Foray, who's one of my favorite actors. It gets back a little bit more,
Yeah.
but and I know there's more sequels. I've seen most of them. They're not worth seeing, really. We talked about it before. The only movie I've ever walked out of is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. But the first film, there's just it's uneasy. It's close enough that you can grasp it, but it's odd enough that you're like, what the heck is going on here?
You may disown me after this. I have a strong, good feeling about the next Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the next generation, and I'm gonna
Matthew McConaughey.
yes.
Uh-huh.
Here's why, and it's strange too. Now, if you would have if somebody would have told me, hey, that girl, she's going to go on to do Bridget Jones's Diary. Now, if she would have done those movies prior, we're not going to see her in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
Renee Zellweger. I had to think of her name.
Right. I forgot her name for a moment, too. Thank you for reminding me. Renee Zellweger, if Renee Zellweger would have did all those other movies prior to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we're never seeing her in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the beautiful part of it. What Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the next generation, really reminds me of, and if you look at Matthew McConaughey and you look at Renee Zellweger, is how young actors and actresses had to really cut their teeth, and it was in horror. That's really the last true film where young actors and actresses had to truly work at honing their craft almost.
Yeah.
It's and I will say, yes, you could tell they're acting, but it's well acted. You know what I mean? They almost feel like at times there's Matthew McConaughey and they feel like the Three Stooges, the brothers are fighting or slapping at each other. Which is silly. It's funny, but it's like, God, you tell there's something wrong with these people, even if they weren't killing anyone. And I like the fact that he has a bum leg. And it's crazy. It's a crazy sequel, like whatever, where you consider a reboot, retcon, sequel, whatever it is to anyone. I don't even know what to consider other than the next generation. And I like the film, and
Yeah.
it's weird. It's one of those films that I watched. I walked away going, you know what? This isn't too bad, but I sort of do wish they would have toned down some of the silliness. I get
Yeah.
why that's in there, because two had silliness in it too, not as much as that,
Right.
but to sort of go back to the original, I think I agree with everything you said about the original. It's raw. It looks like a snuff film. It just looks like a movie where when you watch it, it doesn't feel like you're watching one. It feels like you're watching something just accidentally recorded and put on a film.
Mm-hmm.
And the lines they don't feel like they're being acted or scripted. Everything feels so organic and real. And it's a beautiful movie. But sorry, what was your thought? I forgot to ask. What was your thoughts on the next generation? I'm sorry.
I remember seeing it, and thought the story was very pedestrian. Um, I saw it. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw it before. I think I recognized the name Matthew McConaughey, but I had no idea who he was, and I knew because if my faltering memory is working, seems like it only really got released because they started having a bit of a career. I think it had actually been in the can for a while. It wasn't bad. It was just like, okay, let's kind of pedestrian.
It's, it's,
I mean, I wasn't impressed, but um, you know, I love Bill Moseley's Chop Top,
right,
and that feels like a sequel. I can see him being in the family in the first movie.
right,
Of course, Bill Moseley is an amazing actor, and I think that's part of the comedy you're talking about in Next Gen, where that fails. You don't have somebody with the acting chops of Bill Moseley to pull that off. I mean, dog will run. I mean, just some of his lines are done the wrong way. They would be stupid.
right.
Kind of much like House of a Thousand Corpses or Devil Rejects with him. There's only run, rabbit, run. And again, done the wrong way, you start laughing. Done the right way, it sends a chill down your spine.
When he's at the scene in two at the radio station is so tense and
Yeah,
so good. It's one of the most criminally underrated moments in a sequel. But Leatherface isn't, you don't see Leatherface right there at that moment. You just see him, and he's so creepy.
yep,
He's eerie as hell. And then when you see Leatherface, that just even built like the more terror. And the chainsaw running up her leg, not that he's running it, but he's going up her leg, and it's just that moment is just like it gives you chills.
yep,
Two is a really good sequel. Even like I would agree with you. Like two silliness works.
yeah,
Where the next generation, even though I like it, its silliness is like it's like I've sort of it feels like Three Stooges at times, and it's like, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of the Stooges,
oh yeah, yeah,
but it's just like, yeah, you Matthew. Okay, there's a scene where Matthew McConaughey's leg is malfunctioning.
hmm
He's like, get her, let her, and it's just like right there, that moment is when the film loses any
yeah,
bit of credibility it ever tried to build up. And I'm just like, you really needed that leg to malfunction. And I don't know if it was just shot that way and put in the movie on purpose. I don't know. But that scene right there where the leg malfunctions, where his mechanical leg is like any credibility that you had in this movie is now gone.
and horror comedy is hard to do. There aren't many good horror comedies. We talked about Return of the Living Dead, which is one of the best. One minute you're laughing, and the next minute you're doubling over because somebody just got disemboweled. Um, there's some comedy in the original Dawn of the Dead. It's hard to do that right, and when it goes wrong, it goes wrong. I was thinking about how in one and two you have Tobe Hooper being a driving force. I think he produced three, but I'm not sure. But him, Tobe Hooper, George Romero, John Carpenter, these guys that basically relaunched horror in the late '60s and '70s. It's kind of, I don't know, funny, ironic, odd, fascinating that all three, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Night of the Living Dead, and Halloween, all kind of have a little bit of a documentary feel.
Yeah.
And you said, nobody knew who Jamie Lee Curtis was. Nobody, unless you're a fan of George Romero, you can't name anybody from Night of the Living Dead.
It,
Like you were saying, nobody's, or I shouldn't say nobody's, but people you never heard of before make a movie good in this style, because then you're going, oh look, it's so and so, they're in a movie. It's more like, oh my god, these are just regular people, and you don't have, as the sequels go on, in my opinion, you don't have that driving force from somebody that wanted to tell that story. I'm pretty sure and I'll say for anybody watching, that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was originally called Head Cheese,
uh,
and
yeah.
it's inspired by Ed Gein, like we talked about, but also Tobe Hooper was in, I believe, in Sears one time around Christmas, and he was in the hardware aisle, and he saw a chainsaw, and there was just so many people around him, and he thought about grabbing a chainsaw and just cutting these people down. So he had it helped feed the story he was wanting to tell, and then you get the later guys and say Next Gen or the reboots from Platinum Dunes, and then the other reboots. I at least feel the other reboots. I was looking up today. I can't think of who did them. There's Texas 3D and the one that's coming out soon. Those, at least to me, are made by people who care about. They're like us. They're fans. They watch it. They're interested in it. They've seen it. They know. There's I think it's Texas 3D has Gunnar Hansen back for the first time. Now he's not playing Leatherface. It's also got Marilyn Burns in it. So, and you have John Larroquette in a couple of them. He's supposed to do the narration in the one that's coming out that you referenced. So, as opposed to my driving force is to make money with this film, which there's nothing wrong with. That's why you make a film. You want to make money. But usually you have a story to tell, and I think Tobe Hooper did have a story to tell, and the later guys didn't.
I think, but my biggest issue too is, a friend, to touch back on Halloween for a second, a friend of mine asked me, are they trying to make Andy Matichak the next Jamie Lee Curtis? And I said, well, if they are, they've done a poor job of that. Because, John Carpenter in 1978, the first thing people jump to is, well, she's the daughter of Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis. Well, here's the thing about that. In 1978, probably the only people who knew that were the people who were doing Halloween. There wasn't an internet. There wasn't the World Wide Web. There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't this. So, but even though she's the daughter of that actor and actress, you know what that means? Diddly squat. Because they still had to give her the ball to run with it.
Yeah.
And she still had to prove that she could do it. And she did.
Yep.
That's with my biggest issue with 2018 overall is Andy Matichak, however you pronounce her name, they don't give her that ball. They don't. They know she's not the main attraction in that story, and she should be. And here's what I'll give the remake, and has very little, and I would love to choke the people who did this. You take a well-known television actress, and you put her in a horror movie, and I give you credit. R. Lee Ermey is a good name. He's an antagonist. Now, you didn't know that going in,
right?
And I love that.
Well, kind of you did, because he was the sheriff. You didn't know the rest of it,
Right?
But he was not the friendliest guy in the world. But yeah, I agree with you.
Right. I love his heel turn. That's the best part of the movie to me. That heel turn. It's well done. You didn't know it was coming. It's a punch to the gut in the audience. But then you have outside, like from a protagonist standpoint, when you see her name in the poster and you see her, I told my brother, I said, she's walking out alive. And that's something in any movie. What's the worst thing you can do is look at a poster, not seen the movie ever, and know who's going to live.
Yeah.
Simply because they're the biggest name in that movie. Like literally. They're from a standpoint. And she was. I mean, no offense to R. Lee Ermey, like, even if he was I wouldn't expect him to live, because I've seen R. Lee Ermey movies. I've seen Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, to do what you're talking about, taking a name, you have to do like Hitchcock did with was it Janet Leigh in Psycho? Yeah. You kill them off, or Angie Dickinson in the Brian De Palma movie, Dressed to Kill.
Right.
You kill them off, and then the audience is going, "Oh crap, what's going on? Anybody can die."
Yep.
And Hitchcock did it great, because then you transfer your sympathy, your interest, and your goodwill, if you will, pun intended, to Norman Bates.
Right.
And when the next secret is revealed, the big twist, you're like, oh my God.
Right.
I think it's where Brian De Palma kind of messed up in Dress the Kill. You didn't really have another someone to change it to.
Who gets this right too is Wes Craven in Scream, where he kills a well-known actress, someone who's been well-known in horror, who's a big name,
Yep.
and he turns that attention to Nev Campbell. But not just, here's the thing. People say, well, Nev Campbell's sort of a name at that time. Well, here's the thing. Everyone else in that movie sort of was too, in a way. They had their own, cause it's sort of like, people always say Batman or Robin, but I'll use another. Green Hornet and Kato. Green Hornet had his, and Kato had his too. You know?
Yeah.
That's sort of where Nev Campbell had hers, but everyone else had their own thing too. So you weren't expecting Nev Campbell to live when you saw Scream. At least I wasn't. So, because, hey, you just killed one of the biggest actresses ever in your opening scene. So, yeah, I'm not really, I don't know what to expect next, which is great.
Yeah.
So, it's like, it's the one reason another reason I'll applaud Halloween Resurrection. They kill Laurie Strode off in Resurrection. Do I like the way they did it? No. It's not done, it's not executed greatly, but it's done nonetheless.
Yeah.
And it's like it takes all that and turns its attention on all these other people who are in this movie. Because what? There's no Laurie Strode. Now that there's no safety net. They cut that safety net at the beginning of the movie. And it's like, this is what horror does not do enough of today. They have too much of a safety net underneath of them.
Because they're afraid of not making any money.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's sort of like, there's things like I like about, and I know we're getting off topic, so as a host, I'll apologize. But that's sort of my issue with, like, there's things I like about Halloween Kills, and there's things I don't. But so I'll apologize. To get back on topic, and that's where we'll talk a little bit about Halloween Kills too here in a bit. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre will they ever top the original?
No. I'll just go ahead and stop you. No. They might equal it, but they'll never top it. Just like they'll never be, in my opinion, I don't think you'll ever have anything that equals the original Halloween.
Right.
By John Carpenter on down.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's kind of like George Romero, but also it's different with ghouls and zombies and all that. Once you introduce Leatherface, Michael, Freddy, Jason, you have a singular killer. So you have to start telling a little bit more each time. With Romero's zombies, or ghouls to be more appropriate, they're different all the time. Now you have the same set of characteristics. So you're not really ever going to get that much more, because George would say repeatedly, I don't care why they're coming back from the dead. That's not important. That's not the story I'm telling. So no, to bring it back around, I don't think you can ever. I mean, maybe if you got some great director, great writer, great producer, I don't know who, but somebody knows what they're doing, and somebody that gives them enough money to do it and the freedom to do it. That would be the only way, but I really don't ever see that happening.
I can't remember if I had asked you and Patrick this on the Halloween podcast, and when I bring him back on, I'm going to have to ask him it if I didn't. John Carpenter is sort of the last of the legends, really, like when it comes to horror. And I know he's up there in years. Would you like to see him write and direct one last horror movie?
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
Presuming, I'm going to put my one cravat in it, presuming it's a story he wants to tell.
Right.
I love early John Carpenter. Towards later years, I lose kind of interest. I hate to say it. I wish I liked In the Mouth of Madness more, but I don't.
Mhm.
But like, I saw it on Precinct 13, The Fog, Halloween, of course, Escape from New York. I declare my love for it again. They Live, Prince of Darkness. I mean, he was just, home run, home run, home run. The Thing. I mean, and then it seemed like he kind of ran out of steam, kind of like seemingly George Romero's last decade in the 90s. So if there's he has a story he wants to tell, sure, I would gladly.
I have a story I want John Carpenter to tell. One of my favorite pulp character is the Shadow. And the Shadow to me is basically Pulp's version of Michael Myers in every way. He stalks the criminals like Michael Myers stalks goddamn teenagers, only on a more efficient level. He has agents who do his bidding, and he's very scary and creepy. It has John Carpenter written all over it, really, the way Walter B. Gibson wrote the character. And I don't think he would ever do it. Would I love him for him to do a Shadow movie? Because the Shadow almost had Orson Welles write and direct a movie, which I want to choke Hollywood for it not happening.
Yep.
They almost had Sam Raimi write and direct. This is why we got Darkman.
Yeah, because he couldn't get the rights.
Right, yeah. Sam Raimi literally wrote a Shadow script. Well, he couldn't get the rights, so he took his script and turned it into Darkman. Thank you. I love Darkman. Good movie. But, it because every time I watch that movie, I'm like, this could have been a Shadow movie. Like, every time I watch it, it's great to watch. Don't get me wrong, Liam Neeson's great in it. But every time I watch it, every time, love you, Sam Raimi. But in all fairness, I would love for John Carpenter, or if he would be interested, honestly, like you said, and because that's the thing too. I want somebody to be interested in what they're doing. So if he would be interested in doing it, yes, The Shadow, but like you said too, there's things out there I'm sure he would be interested in. But if there's something honestly he wants to do out there that he wants to write and direct, let him do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mine would be the third and final Snake Plissken film. One more John Carpenter, Kurt Russell film. But I always say John Carpenter and Kurt Russell are the John Ford and John Wayne of my generation.
Yep.
Um, so I Escape from Earth, or Escape from the Earth, if you prefer. I came across an old status on Facebook I had where George Romero, as a dream I had, where George Romero and John Carpenter worked together, and it was Snake Plissken Escapes from the Dead. Like, that would be incredibly awesome or incredibly horrible.
Well, here's the thing too, and I've talked about this too. They don't have to do another escape movie to do a Snake Plissken movie because there's the Snake Plissken Chronicles. But I don't know if John would be interested in doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, did this hold up to the original, you think?
Sorry, drop something. Yes, yeah, I think it did. And of course, it's a different beast.
Yeah.
Brought my props.
I like that.
It's a different beast, like we said. It's a little bit more of a comedy. Now, it has some really weird, scary, creepy moments. And I think I said this before, but Bill Moseley, so creepy in his films, such a good actor. He just draws you in. And then I'll read his statuses on Facebook, and he's like, "Yeah, I fed the dog and made the wife breakfast," and you're just like, it always takes this little second to flip. Oh yeah, he's an actor, but he really he carries, I don't know, 50% of that film, and then Dennis Hopper carries the other 50. Um, I don't remember what I originally saw Dennis Hopper in, but when I saw Texas 2, I did not like Dennis Hopper, and I was not happy that he was in it. And by the end of it, I was happy he was in it, because that's kind of, we see these films and the crazy killer comes, and nobody can stand against them. And of course, when you get to the later films in each series, okay, you understand that. But I wanted to see somebody stand up and try to fight the dragon, and Dennis Hopper did. And I love the fact that he was, I think he was Franklin and Sally's uncle. I forget exactly where his character was, but and he walked that line between, you know, I'm a policeman and I'm coming for you.
Yep. This was actually the first Dennis Hopper movie I saw, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. I didn't see Easy Rider until I was close to being a teenager.
Maybe that was it.
You know,
Maybe
so, and I never really cared for the movie after seeing it. Like, I didn't get the appeal.
Yeah.
But Dennis Hopper does bring it, even though he's an actor, he brings his own grit to that movie in a very good way. Yes, he's acting, but he brings every part of that character to life.
Yep.
I mean, he does not miss one beat, and he's great in it. He's a joy. If an actor's going to act and they're a joy to watch, then act away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've talked about actors. There's Dennis Hopper isn't too pretty to look at. You know what I mean? And that's no offense to the late Dennis Hopper, but
he didn't do much for me either in the look department. But yeah,
I don't want somebody who's so pretty, male or female, that when you look at them, you go, "Oh, they're just they're too pretty or cute to be in this movie."
Yeah. Reality isn't always pretty.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes it's ugly. So yeah, that works. I mean, sure, Superman's a nice, handsome fella, Batman too, but they're not coming to save you in Texas Chainsaw Man 1, 2, 3, 4, or the next generation.
Heaven help them if they did.
Oh, it'd be funny, seeing Superman just stand there as the chainsaw teeth go flying off, and he just looks up like, what?
Yeah, what are you doing? Somebody, I don't know if this is still on YouTube, but if I could find it, I'm going to send it to you. Somebody had where Superman, Wonder Woman were versing the horror villains like Jason, Hellraiser, and stuff like that. If I can find it, I'll send it to you. But it's funny as hell. And my favorite scene is when Freddy's like, I forget who's in the dream with him. He's torturing one of the superheroes or something. And Ash comes in the dream and says, shoots him and says, "Come get some," which is funny. And it's young Ash. It's Ash from Evil Dead 2. But it's beautiful.
Everything's better with Bruce Campbell.
Exactly. But which works. Are you excited about the Evil Dead game, man?
Kind of. Apparently there's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game either coming out or recently did come out. I was totally unaware of that.
Yeah, there is one coming out. Kane Hodder is going to play Leatherface, I believe. Is going to do the motions for Leatherface.
Okay, I'm a big fan of Kane, so he's my favorite Jason, and so that'd be interesting to see him cross the line, if you will.
Because the Gun Media, who made the Friday the 13th game, are making a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. So I'm excited about that because they really did a good job with the Friday the 13th game. So I'm really interested to see how it looks and how it plays. My favorite part about when I was first playing it, like the Friday the 13th game, and it kept glitching, and it glitches on purpose to mess you up if you're like one of the camp counselors. Well, I was like, "Is there something wrong with the game?" I'm like, no, that would be nice though, but no.
Yeah. I got that game and was playing it. I love it. Part of the problem is it's so good. I sometimes want to stop it and go watch a Friday the 13th film. That's how good it is. It just immerses you. But my wife would. She's not a horror or conflict kind of person. So if I played it, she wouldn't watch. And I got my first trophy. There's a trophy where you take a victim and you slam a door until you burst their head, and the trophy is "This door won't shut," or
Yeah.
as I call it, "This door won't shut."
That is it is one of the coolest trophies too. My favorite is the cook when you get the trophy when Jason's dressed like a cook because you throw him in the fire. All of that trophy cracked me up when I was
Yep.
doing it. Even when somebody did it on me, I laugh because it's funny
Yeah,
and you know what they're going for, and you're trying to hit the button to get out of their grasp. Like, no, don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me.
but that's the thing. Other than really Friday one, maybe for two. Friday didn't take itself too seriously. Friday one did, but that's a whole nother beast. So again, it's kind of the horror comedy bit that works.
Right. Three, like part three, Leatherface, like Texas Chainsaw Part Three, to me got a lot closer back to what one was
Yeah.
than what two, you know, what. And I'm taking nothing away from two,
Oh no, no.
but three didn't have any really huge names in it. It didn't try to, make people look too pretty. It was it. Could you tell it was a movie from start to go? Yes, because of the way it was shot and the way it was done. By this time, it's. I think it was made in the '80s. I believe. I could be wrong.
Let me check real quick while you're talking.
Okay.
It's like 1990.
Okay, so 1990. But by the time that's made, 1990, horror had changed really.
Yeah.
I mean, by 1990, horror had changed, and not in a bad way. But if a horror movie like that got made in the '90s, it got shot differently.
Yeah.
And my biggest issue with the movie isn't the movie itself. It was so hard to find this movie to rent in the '90s. Like,
I guess I shouldn't tell you. I actually got to see it in the theater.
I'm so mad at you. No.
I that was back in my Fangoria days, and I knew of Ken Foray, Benny, I think is his character's name, and he was in it, and I'm like, I'm there, I am there, because I love Ken Foray. I will watch him in anything. I used to have a videotape of various things I'd catch him in, like an episode of Divorce Court. Um, he was in an episode of Knight Rider, or not Knight Rider, Hunter. He was in an episode of maybe A-Team, but just stuff like that he was in. So I knew he was in Texas 3. I was like, I am seeing this. I think I went like on a Tuesday night or something, and I was excited. I knew who he was, but then, like you said, that's not a big name outside of a very small reference group, unfortunately, but still.
Send Butch evil card for seeing Texas Chainsaw. And no, but by the time when I had seen this, right, late, so mid '93 is when I saw it on VHS. My mom drove us clear to Brownsville. That was the videotape store that had it.
Mm-hmm.
The one in town. There was one in Uniontown. It's not there no more. Most of them are pretty much all are gone. But the one in Uniontown was like a ways from the hill, what was away from the old Hills Plaza, and so it was like right there. It was like in like underneath an old apartment building, and they had the poster up for Texas Chainsaw 3, and I'm thinking, oh, they must have it. They had the poster,
Yeah.
and my mom said, we'll come back tomorrow, which no big deal. My mom didn't have time to stop. So she's like, we'll come back tomorrow. I promise. I know you want to see it. I do too. So it's like, I know my mom is good on her word. She loves horror. So cool. We go back. Posters down, which I found odd. And I asked for the movie. She goes, I'm sorry. I can't. They didn't ship it. They won't let me show it. They won't give it to me. And I was like, and we went to the next one, and it was all the same treatment. And my mom called around. We drove clear to Brownsville. And for anyone who's from Uniontown, PA, and you know how far that is, you get my frustration. They had that store had it. We rented it. We took it back because again 5-day rental. We watched it for 2 days. We took it back, and I loved it. I love the truck scene. The opening is my favorite opening of any Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I love the lighting, the darkness. Really, really good, great watch. There's nothing wrong with it, So.
What's funny is to look at it now, and you have Viggo Mortensen, who went on to become famous as Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, and he's playing. I can't remember his character's real name, but he likes to be called Tex. I remember that. And there was William Butler and Kate Hodge, people that went on to have a little bit of a career, and it's just like that movie went nowhere. It's like the poor thing was cursed or something. Your story there about the video, I wonder if like maybe there was some sort of distribution deal that fell through or what. That seems a little odd.
It's really odd because I think now I do have a theory on this. I don't think it. Now you could be right. My theory is because all the stores that got hit by this, and I noticed this because my mom's store was a victim of this, was mom and pop stores.
Mm-hmm.
But where we went, it was a big name video store. So it's like, and I said to my mom, I said, it's real funny. All the stores, most of the stores we went to were mom and pop stores, other than the one where we got the VHS. And she said, look, you can only fight the system so much. Okay? She goes, if we close up shop, we close up shop. She goes, because she's
part of that, the Blockbuster deal, the revenue sharing and all that.
I don't know what the reason is. I just remember it because I remember the poster.
Mm-hmm.
Got Leatherface holding the chain. That I remember most. And I remember just being so excited to watch it. Yes. I remember it, and I remember it being up in the window of that shop, tape store. I call it shop, and the next day it was down. I just thought maybe they were going to move the poster because most video stores, when they had a poster up, they had it next to another poster.
Yeah.
And the way that they positioned their poster, it was next to other movie. It was so close to other movies, you might not be able to tell what it is. So I figured they were just taking it down to move it. Well, when I went in the store, like I said, she's like, no, they didn't ship it. They don't want us to have it, they said. And I was just like, and we called around. Then finally, we got one store, and I think it was a Blockbuster, in fact, if I remember serves that or something else, I forget. But it was one of those times where I just went, yeah, people suck. There are people who are truly evil, and most of them are in the movie industry.
And they don't really use a chainsaw.
No, they don't. They don't.
Did you see the Texas remake?
The one with Jennifer Biel?
Or Jennifer whatever.
Yeah.
From Seventh Heaven.
I saw that. Okay, I saw this in theater, and that's the one where I saw the poster. Me and my brother are walking. Now, the AMC theater that was at the Uniontown Mall, it's not there no more. They closed that thing down. As I've said to people before, I couldn't go see Halloween Kills in theater because all the local theaters are shut down where I live.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not driving 45 minutes to Pittsburgh. Just sorry, not. But when we were walking up, I don't like watching trailers really. Only teasers, and that's it. But we're walking up, and I see Jennifer Biel on the poster, and she's the only name I see in the poster. There's her name and there's the other actors. And I looked at my brother. I had, was it $80 to my name, and one was a $50 bill. I pulled out my 50 and I said, I will bet you $50 Jennifer Beal lives. Her character will live. And he pulled out his 50. He said, I'll take your money. And I said, no, but I'll be taking yours by the end of this movie. And well, by the end of that movie, my friend Butch, I won me some money.
There was an interesting thing that I noticed with the remake. My generation, Generation X, we look at TCM and like I said, it's creepy. It has a vibe. It has a feel. Seemed like, not necessarily generation. I'm not trying to make it a generation thing, but the younger kids, they would watch it and they'd be like, "It's not scary," and I'm like, "Are you insane?" I mean, I remember people saying that to me, and the problem was, originally you have to sit there and watch it. It just slowly, it's a slow burn, if you will. It builds and it builds and it builds. A lot of Psycho's another one. If you pause it to go to the bathroom, or you're watching it on TV and commercials come in, or ads come on YouTube, if you're watching it somewhere on YouTube or on, that kills the suspense. And I think that's the problem for them. And I feel like the remake, was made for people like that and people like me. And I mean, yeah, you make a remake of a film, you have to expect people to look at it and go, compare it to the original. You can't, you can put return, remake, reimagining, whatever. You're still going to be imagined. You're still going to be compared. And the people that thought the original Texas wasn't scary, they're the ones that did the remake, and that wasn't scary. The scene with Arlie Ermy that you mentioned, that was kind of scary.
Yeah.
But it didn't have a whole lot to do with the chainsaw, and it didn't have a whole lot to do with the massacre, but it was in Texas. Right. I remember another thing that really dragged me out of it is back at that time, I was a big fan of the Ain't It Cool news website, and apparently he was the guy that used to run it. Harry Knowles, I believe, was his name. There is a I don't know if it's a cast of his head or what, but his head's on a table. Well, that was one of those moments that just pulled me. Oh yeah, watching the film, not all these shots of this woman's butt wasn't reminding me, because a friend of mine said to her jeans should be listed in the credits as well. That was something I noticed today when I was rewatching the original. So many shots right behind the women's butts would walk right in front of the camera. I mean, I'm a heterosexual male. I don't mind, looking at attractive women. But it was just like, oh my God, come on. But the scene with Harry Knowles just drove me right back out. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Here's the thing, though, too. In the original, when you're in the van and the guy stabs his hand, okay, that's an image you don't get out of your head.
Yep.
That's the problem. There are a lot of problems with the remake. The two biggest glaring ones is, number one, you have an actress who you knew was going to leave television. It's weird. I've sort of discussed this on a video way, way, way back, but I'll repeat it here for those who haven't heard it. Jennifer Beal, at that time, there were a lot of 90s actresses you sort of knew were going to be in Hollywood. Neve Campbell, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and there were a couple others. But she was sort of the one that everybody was saying, she's next. And she sort of waited, and I think it was because of her age, a little too long to make that jump. And the movie she happens to make the jump to happens to be a remake of everyone's favorite horror movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that's her movie where she has to... I said The Next Generation was a movie to me that felt like the last of the cutting of the teeth. She's put in a horror movie to cut her teeth. The problem is she's the only really big name there. And so when you say, well, is she really cutting her teeth, or is this, it's sort of like a wrestling match, who's going to go over.
Right.
And when you know who's going to go over, and it's the perfect comparison. Film's telegraphed. Movies are telegraphed. You don't know, you might not know what's going to happen, but they do. Okay? Wrestling, same thing. You might not know necessarily what's going to happen at the end, but they do. But if you do know, if you happen to pick up on, no, I know this person's going to win, and then they do, it takes it away from you.
Yeah.
And same thing with Jennifer Beal. Good actress. I'm not taking anything away from her craft or anything. And yes, she's a very beautiful woman. But you don't stick her in a movie with no one else around her. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ramble, but I'll give a great example. Renee Zellweger was not a name at that time, exactly, when she did Next Generation. She wasn't a big name. She was somebody who I hadn't heard of, at least, Jennifer Beal was somebody who was constantly in front of a camera on a well-known television show.
Yeah. Well, I had a thought and it just ran away.
Take your time.
The role, if I'm not the notorious hack Marcus Nespel, but if I were in charge, I tell you the role I would have given her, if I'm remembering right, in the one time that I viewed it, the remake. Don't they pick up a hitchhiker, but this time it's a woman? And instead of cutting herself, doesn't she just pull a gun out of somewhere and shoot herself? Isn't that how the remake begins?
Yep.
I would make that Jennifer, whatever her last name is. That's who she played. Because then, like we were talking about, boom, she's gone.
Yep.
Like, wait, what?
Yep, she's not. Here she is, this big actress, and you're right. Have her shoot it, and then it's like, oh shit, where's this gonna go? There's no net. I'll tell you another role they could have cast her in if Hollywood would have did it, but they're too worried. Again, I'll always complain that there's times that games are too worried about becoming movies now. But Final Fantasy VII, if they would have turned that into a movie, Tifa Lockhart could have been her role, But that's the thing, though, too. Like, I love your idea. Again, it's unpredictable, and that's something I want in your. If it's a crazy example, if Halloween 2018 has Laurie Strode dying at a certain point, and now you're left with Andy, somewhere in that film, or she's just a focus and Laurie's off somewhere and you don't know where, then the focus is on that character. You have the audience, okay, they're focusing on this character. Here's Michael Myers stalking this girl who happens to be the granddaughter of Laurie Strode. And it's like, where was that movie? Oh, nowhere. Okay, thank you for wasting my time.
That's how I kind of feel about Kills. Like you said, there's things I like about it, there's things I don't. Knowing it's the middle of a trilogy,
yeah.
If Jamie Lee Curtis is killed in the first 5 minutes of Halloween's Ends, which I hope she's not, because I saw that movie and it was called Halloween Resurrection, and that was if you stop Resurrection when she dies, it's a much better film, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, you movies, not just horror movies nowadays, they don't want to take any chances because taking chances pulls away from the dollar value. Well, I went to see it for actor or actress X, and they killed them in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you were talking about it when you know something's going to happen. I don't know how many times a trailer or whatever you want to call the thing that runs. If you put your cursor on Netflix on a movie and it shows like a little promo,
Yeah.
every time I watch that, I'll look at my wife and go, "This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. That's gonna happen." And it happens. And it's like, why do I need to watch this film? I've seen it before.
That's something. That's something I'm hoping that when I go to watch, and I hope it doesn't happen for you too. When we go to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the new one, we click it, and when we say, "Oh, that's gonna happen," No, I don't want to do that for your movie. I don't want to be right. I don't, you know what I mean?
I think that's why with 2, 3, they went a different way, because you can't really match the feel, the vibe, the whatever of the original. I can't think of any movie except for maybe The Exorcist that just has that feeling through it. So, Tobe Hooper went on the other end with 2. No, I mean, not he didn't make a slapstick comedy,
Right.
but he had comedy in it. And then the third one, you actually have somebody that's capable of standing up to Leatherface in Ken Foray. But the good thing is they changed it and we didn't see the exact same film. The bad thing is I feel like everybody after, well, maybe even starting with 3, they didn't know what to do with Leatherface.
I think
And
that's
so it's like, they run into this couple in a trucker. I mean,
I think that's been the biggest issue with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love what you just said. They don't know what to do with Leatherface, and every time they've come back with him, they had Leatherface sort of be the hero in one of them, and it's like, no, no, you don't make Leatherface a good guy at all. You make him and his family sick, sadistic bastards because that's scary. Leatherface is a hero. Yeah, that's not scary to me. Um, Here's the thing: when they said about the Texas Rangers shooting him, it's like, yes, I would too. Yes, what?
the only way I agree with you, the only way you can really make Leatherface a hero is when you have a Freddy versus Jason thing where you've got you've got this guy, and both of them are just horrible bastards, and it's not so much that you're rooting for one over the other. It's just like, okay, maybe Lefty will kill Righty, and then somebody else can kill Lefty, and we're all. Yeah, I think you're talking about. I think it's the one they called 3D, where the main character is eventually revealed to be his cousin or something.
Yeah.
I will give him the one point of that is something that's a reoccurring theme, the family, whether it's the Sawyers or the name they use in the remakes. There is a family, and he's not going to attack his family.
Yeah.
One thing I love about the original is when Drayton Sawyer kidnaps Sally Hardesty and takes her to the house, and he tells the hitchhiker take her in, and he's standing there, and he goes to the door that the Leatherface's chainsaw, and he's like, "Look what your brother did to the door." I love that moment. And he goes in there, and he's like slapping Leatherface around, and he's hitting him, and Leatherface, he's mumbling or whatever it is. Something that you were talking about, and I thought about it. That's like child Leatherface.
Right.
Texas 2 with Stretch and the erotic chainsaw, if you will. That's teenager.
Yeah.
Leatherface. And 3, you've got I won't say middle age, but whatever, somewhere between middle age and a teenager Leatherface, because it's just this is now kind of his job. He goes out, kills people, and sews their face. Makes masks.
Adult.
Yeah. There's a website that it's actually for role-playing games. It's called writeups.org, WRITESUPS.org, and they have a write-up of Leatherface. And there's this really interesting part in it that the family changes in each movie, and they kind of give him this is an interpretation, and they say it. You don't have to use this, that what it is, that's not really his family after the Sawyers. Maybe even the Sawyers aren't, but it's people that he's tried to kill, and basically he destroys their mind like he did Sally in one. And if they stay around him long enough, they assume a role in his family. So Sally might have become his sister or his wife or whatever, and that's why the family keeps changing.
Man.
I just always thought that was really interesting, and in a way you can always just, he's going to have a family. Each person in his family is actually a former victim that he's basically destroyed mentally, and they accept a new identity as that assigned family member.
That would be interesting too, because if you look at Sally, really, I mean, they're trying to kill her by hitting her over the head, and they're not really being too
Grandpa,
Grandpa.
my cousin that introduced me to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, every now and then he would just he would randomly, oh, Grandpa used to kill him with one hit, and it'd just be like, and we would look at each other and we'd laugh, and of course everybody else is like, what? And it's like, I learned, don't even try to explain. But Grandpa,
Yes, Grandpa could kill with one hit, probably 70 years ago. And
that's something super creepy about the original too, because I thought, and we're supposed to, I believe, we're supposed to believe Grandma and Grandpa are dead.
right.
And then, they cut her finger and Grandpa starts licking it. And I was just like, creepiest damn thing I've ever seen. The blood. And I've seen almost every English language Dracula film ever made.
If they want to do something really creepy for this remake, and I'm not suggesting they do this, have Grandpa be dead looking, okay? Don't cut the finger off. Have him pick up the chainsaw and kill somebody.
I don't know if you've seen the poster that got released. It's kind of a backlit view of Leatherface, and I think he's in a cornfield or something.
I've seen it, yeah.
And somebody talked about, I don't know if you're familiar with the comic book movies Old Man Logan, but they called it Old Man Leatherface.
Yeah.
And the first thought that ran through my head was, damn, I wonder if Leatherface is going to be Grandpa this time.
Butch, if he is, I'm going to be thinking about you when I watch that movie. I'm going to be like, Butch Rosenbalm was right. Oh my God. Like, Butch, we gotta get on the podcast now.
Gotta let me finish watching it. That's the thing. Like I said, you can either try to do something new, which that would somewhat be, and it's something new, but it stays true to the movies. Referencing these DVDs over here that nobody can see, so.
Right.
That, to me, that's how you progress a film with a linear character. So if, let's say, Leatherface was 20 in 74.
Right.
Okay. 84, 94, 04, 14. Let's say the next one takes place in 2024. He's 70.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should be Grandpa.
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't mean I want to see little Leatherface with his little toy Black & Decker, but Jason, you can get away with it because Jason has died multiple times. Freddy is dead. They've dealt with Michael being older.
Yeah.
So, unless, I don't know, to me, you just can't restart it all over. And I don't think that's the way they're going with it from what little bit I've read, but I hope not.
Well, here's the thing. He's either going to have a Husqvarna, a John Deere, it's one of those he's going to have a chainsaw product from somewhere. So either they're going to have like really cheap, or they're just going to officially sell out and have one of those expensive, nice ones.
I think it was for 3. There was a trailer that kind of mimicked the trailer for Excalibur, where this chainsaw comes out of the water.
Yeah.
And it goes flying like when Excalibur did in Excalibur, and then he just grabs it. And I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, what the hell is this? And then he pulls it. He's like, and I'm like, oh shit, this is another Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. But I remember that they mimic it perfectly with the chainsaw blade coming out of the water. I was like, I don't know, the Lady of the Lake. I don't know what we have in America that matches that, but obviously she's got it wrong.
When you're given things to Leatherface, you have sold your soul and then some. Okay.
I think it was a double exhaust chainsaw. I mean, it was some ridiculous change, or maybe that's the one in the movie. But I remember it was just impossibly long, unwieldy, and I was just like, I remember thinking, this is awesome and stupid at the same time.
You know what it is? Merlin got tired of playing around with that sissy King Arthur. And he decided to go to Texas and team with the real McCoy, someone who would get the job done. So
well, kill everybody.
That's right. It's here.
And don't have sex with your sister. I've told my wife I have a idea for one book is never take food from a pregnant lady, and the second one is don't have sex with your sister. And I told her one of my personal rules is I would never date a woman named Morgan or Morgana. Yeah. And she asked me a while back that I said that years ago, and we were talking about when we first met recently, and she looked at me and she says to me, dead serious, she goes, would you have dated me if my name was Morgan? And I said, I don't think I had that rule at that time, though. Probably in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh God, this is just going to end horribly. I know she's not my sister, but this is not going to end well. But what a wonderful, fiery death this is going to be.
See, my wife has the same first, well, Joel Lee. Mm-hmm. So my wife, when after we got married, people have mistook us for brother and sister. It's like no, we're not related. Like they told her late mom, because her mom had passed away, but they told her mom at the time when she was alive that we had to dilate your one twin's eye. They were talking about me, and she's like, twin? What are you talking about? I didn't ever have twins. Your son? She goes, I never had a boy. I had 4 girls. She goes, I didn't lose count. Okay?
I was there for all of them.
I was there. I didn't see your ass there. That is like, she goes, that's my son-in-law. Not my son. My son-in-law. Yeah.
I went with I think it was my grandfather's funeral, and it was my sister, me, and my cousin, the cousin from Memphis, Mike, on this side of me. And my sister is one of these people, she knows everybody in the family. She'll be like, and if she has a chance, she'll lean over and go, this, that's so-and-so, or, and, that's so-and-so's whatever, to, let me know. Because I know some of them. Now, don't get me wrong, I know some of my relatives, but when you start getting further out, I'm like, and I'll never forget whoever this one person was. They hugged her, and I'm so sorry. And they turned to me and they took my hand and they're like, is this your husband? And me and my sister looked at each other and just started laughing very inappropriately loud. And my sister's like, no, that's Butch, my brother. And and they pointed to our cousin Mike. She goes, we thought that was Butch.
When my mom's mom died, when my grandmother died, at the funeral, my cousin, who I knew who she was, I went right up to her, and she said, "Hi, Joel," and I shook my head. I knew who she was, and I said, "Who are you?" Like I hadn't seen her in forever, and she's like, her mouth dropped. I said, "Oh, I'm kidding, Leslie." She just looked at me like she wanted to choke me. Like, listen, if you think I don't remember who you are, that's not on me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to use that to my advantage to trick you.
It would have been hilarious if you'd said, "Oh, I know who you are, Marion."
What was bad was my grandfather was sitting right next to her. He's laughing about the whole thing. Like, he's like rolling on the floor. And it's like, he's like, you knew. He goes, he just shook. He goes, I can't believe you did that. I said, you were laughing about it. So, yeah.
Something right there.
Right, right. It's like, you can't get that me here. You're cracking up on the floor here. You're rolling on the floor, and grandma's in the coffin, right there. Like, you can't, like, no.
But you know what? There's been a few times, a good laugh like that. There's been several that were not funny laughs, but a good laugh like that at a funeral, that can be a godsend.
It's like, when you die, what do you want people, like, just try to be happy, like, live your life, like, for God's sake. But yeah, what okay, how would you rank them in order, Texas Chainsaw movies?
In order.
In order.
No, number one's number one, number two's number two, number three's number three. Next gen remake. I think I watched part of the remake sequel, mostly just to see how R. Lee Hermes' character got into the sheriff. And as soon as that part got through, I couldn't care less. Seemed like maybe one of the main characters was like had got drafted for Vietnam, if I'm remembering right. I actually liked I for whatever reason I liked the one where the female character was Leatherface's cousin. Just I don't know why it wasn't that good of a story, but I found it interesting. I agree, Leatherface is not a hero, so don't get me wrong. But yeah, pretty much in first three in order, and then everything else is tied at four with the heading I really don't care.
I would have loved if they would have had her friend, like, because her friends aren't really jerks. If her friends would have been complete douchebags.
Yeah.
To her.
Yeah.
And then she tells him to kill them. Or she does it herself. That would have been interesting.
Or there was no Leatherface, and she had MPD. Like you said, I want to mention something before we wrap this up. I saw something on Facebook this past week or two, and it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the only movie where you'll see somebody in a wheelchair killed and enjoy it. And I remember, the first few times I watched TCM, God, I couldn't stand Franklin. And I did watch it at 1.5 speed because I've seen it before. And you know what? This time, I know I'm older, and I alternate between feeling sorry from Franklin and thinking he was the only one that had any sense. Yeah. So it's kind of odd, the way your perspective changes. Because in '74 there was no Americans with Disabilities Act. There's not a whole lot of places for him to go. There's not a whole lot for him to do. There's one point where the poor guy's got to pee in a can.
Right.
And just watching it, and I'm thinking, wow, I feel so sorry for Franklin. Yeah. It's just, it was odd. Where used to I couldn't stand him, and then now it's like, you poor man.
Here's what I'll say about Franklin. The character early is like really good, and the character later, it's like you sort of get why he is the way he is. He's in a wheelchair. He didn't ask to be there. And that's what I'll say is sometimes that can, like, when you're younger, you don't really think about that. And then when you get older, it's like, oh yeah. Because by the time you're older, you've seen it somewhere along the line too. Maybe not necessarily in your family, but in someone else's, So it's like you more get it, like the reality of it hits home a little more, if that makes sense.
Something else I noticed. Oh God, I keep making more and more points, making this video longer. Um, I asked our mutual friend Patrick McCray one time. I said, "What movies really make you think of a decade?" I said, "What movie makes you think of the '70s?" And he said, "Jaws." And I don't think I necessarily phrased my question right, because one thing I love to do with older films, especially if it's a film that came out when I was alive, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Assault on Precinct 13, is look in the background, see how much gas was. Or, they go by a grocery store. Oh, look, oranges were a penny. We were watching, me and my wife were watching something recently, and oranges was like a penny or 2 cents. And watching, like, there's the scene where the two girls get a Coke. I think they put a quarter in, and it's a glass bottle, and you have to open the little door and pull it out, and then put the bottle up in there, and it just, like, that's one thing I think younger people might not understand. Not that they can't understand, a drink or something, but there were no cell phones. I mean, Drayton even said, "We'll have to go over to so and so to use the phone."
Yep.
There weren't cell phones. There wasn't cable. At least I didn't. We didn't have cable till like the mid '80s, maybe a little bit later. Just looking back at that, and of course, I was a kid, and my perception of time is different. But time seemed to go slower then. Of course, I'm an adult who has to, I got up at this time so I can get ready and be at work by this time so I can get this done, and then go to lunch and then come home. And, the clock controls my life more. Where when you're a kid, it's kind of like, oh, look, it's a cloud. But looking back at the 70s, and not that people weren't busy, but you didn't have so many things, so many clocks controlling you. And it was just, the first part of the film is just, ain't got no gas, and want some barbecue, and I'm sure nowadays, that would seem odd. They go to this gas station and barbecue. How weird that might look, and I'm sure the health inspector would close them. Oh, I do have to tell you one story. You asked me about seeing the original the first time. Said cousin, who I've mentioned repeatedly, he wanted to stop and get some barbecue. And and I didn't really want barbecue. I got chili, which ties into the second one, which wasn't out at that time. And so I remember sitting there eating that chili, and then what is really going on? I'm like, I could not finish it after that. I was like, thank God I did not get barbecue.
My late great uncle, who I've mentioned before, lived in Whitwell, Tennessee. We had seen Deliverance, and he said, "Y'all hear the banjos as you were coming down?" And looking at him, we just shook our head at him. We're like, "No." He goes, "I got one in the attic. You want it?" And we're like, "No, we're good. We're good. Like, we're sleeping outside." But he knew we would watch horror movies constantly, and any movie we'd watch, he'd agitate us to death about it. Like Friday the 13th, Deliverance, Halloween, it did not matter. That man would find a way to agitate the hell out of you for it, and he loved doing it.
I used to date this woman, and we would go on Saturdays and watch her son, and then later both sons play Optimus League football. And we went to a place I don't think I'd ever been before. It's called Sunbright. And we seemed like we drove and drove. I mean, seriously, it seemed like we drove for an hour to get there. I ended up looking it up on the internet to see where we went. And it wasn't really that far away, but we got out of the car, and I pulled her close, and I whispered, I said, if I hear a banjo, you better beat me back to this car, because you will get left.
See, that's basically anybody. Like, if you, like, when my brother would drive to West Virginia to get my parents a lottery ticket, he'd say, if you get out of the car You have 5 minutes to be outside the car, and if you're not back in this car within 5 minutes, I will leave you and I will forget you exist. I have seen Deliverance, goddamn you, and I do not care what happens to you if you do not get back in here within. Remember, 5 minutes? And he would say, you better set your watch. And I'm like, he set my watch. I'm like, and I looked at my brother. I'm like, I don't see my brother is a paranoid schizo on here anywhere, dude. Like, I don't. And he looked at me. He just shook his head. He goes, "You've seen that movie too?" I said, "Yes, and it's a movie." But
As I said once, I am not learning how to squeal like a pig.
no, right. I I have a question for you
Sure.
about that real quick before we go. Burt Reynolds' character. Do you think he knew about the hillbillies the whole time, the inbred hillbillies, and was set to kill them?
I think he probably knew, about them. I don't think he thought it would go as far as it did.
Right.
And then, him being the manly character.
Right.
Once you make that decision, once you go at the time, go full John Wayne, you
Yeah.
know, Ned Beatty, for all the crap he gets for that, or got from that film, people forget that one point. He grabs that dude and he just takes him off, and I'm taking you with me.
Yep.
So that's one thing about some horror movies, some action movies, when you see these bad guys and they show their colors, and they're going to kill you, possibly eat you, or do more horrible things to you. Everything, as far as that's when we reach the Godzilla threshold.
Yeah.
I want to fight you. I want to see a character fight them with everything they have. Nothing is off the table, because your end is my is wanting to end me. So
Right.
everything is allowed to save myself.
Here's why I ask you that. When I was a kid and I watched Deliverance, I didn't think much of Burt Reynolds, like character. I thought, oh, he just out with his friends. As I got older and I watched it like a lot more since then, and I'm like, it's real interesting. Burt Reynolds' character comes up with that cover story real quick, like he's almost like he's ready for it. And I'm looking at my wife and I'm like, I swear to God, it's almost like he was sent there to kill them, and he just took his friends along for the ride.
Sounds like somebody just came up with a prequel.
That will go straight to hell. But is there anything you want to add, man, before we go?
I don't think so. I think we've strayed far enough from the topic.
Butch, man, it was a blast. Thank you for the laughs and the fun. It was so awesome.
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate it, buddy. Good talk on Wayne too.
I hope you have a great weekend, man. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and God bless, man. Peace.
You as well.